All right. Hope you guys are doing well. Um, so I have some interesting things to say as usual. Um, how do I begin? Because I know just thinking about this, like it it's such a always thinking about this topic is like something that works me up to where I'm like it's tantamount to like just wanting to punch something. But anyways, this talk is going to be about the moralization of art and how we've seemed to have inversed the relationship between signifier and signified. So for this example, I'm going to use cats. I'm going to use cats as an example. Daniel Gardner always does this pretty well. I'm going to try to replicate it in some ways. So have mercy on me. um, so okay, so this is my theory about the moralization of art is that actually we've switched the signifier and the signified, and eventually towards the end I will say like perhaps this is why I think even Lacan or Derrida say like there is no signified, there's just signifiers. But anyways, to use my example, and I'll be borrowing Daniel Gardner's example, is the difference between the word cat and the actual cat. So the way that we understand this typically is that the word cat is the signifier for the signified cat, like signified actual cat. Um, because you would not be able to know what somebody means by the word cat alone until you actually encounter said cat. Okay, could because Daniel makes this very great argument where it's like, okay, what's a cat, right? You'd be like, oh, it's a animal, four-legged, furry. You'd be like, okay, well, that's not. There's a lot of things that are four-legged and furry, right? So you wouldn't be able to say that just by the name itself, cat. You wouldn't be able to get like an actual signification. Like you'd have to, in essence, experience cat in itself. So this is my speculation between art and the artist. In my opinion, the artwork, the it should be the artist is the name, like the abstract name cat, and the artwork should be the signified, right? And it's funny because I'm pretty sure people would hear me speaking about this now and be like, yeah, I mean, that's how we interpret art actually. Um, but no, we don't. No, we don't. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why that we don't interpret art that way is because it seems like the way that we interpret art and the artist is actually the inverse, where the art becomes the abstract name signifying, and where the artist becomes the signified. So this is how I feel like we've kind of inversed this relationship where it's like the artist actually should be the abstract notion signifying the reality, the artwork itself. That's what it should be signifying. Um, but it's not. So instead, we have this weird inverse relationship where the we have made the artwork the signifier and the artist the signified. So that means we basically what I'm saying is that we can't approach the artwork without referencing it back to the artist. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be like that. And one of my favorite examples I like to use is like, if all art was anonymous, who could you refer to? Like, how would you be able to refer to anything of this nature? You just wouldn't be able to. Cat's playing in the box. Okay. Speaking of cats, so you wouldn't be able to make any reference if I were to say, look, all art has been stripped of its references. Like, you wouldn't be able to know which artist made the artwork. You wouldn't know. You'd have no reference. I like this example because basically it shows how if artwork had no reference to an artist, you'd have no choice but to encounter the artwork for itself. But because our society intimately links the artist with the artwork, we inevitably always refer back to the artist when we encounter the artwork. And this is why I'm saying that we have approached it in a very awkward disordering, because the artist should be the one that is the abstract name, providing that kind of, like, he should be the abstract name, the signifier, and then the art should be the signifier, right? But instead, we have the artwork as a signifier, and the artist is a signified. Meaning, like, for example, if I bring up Kanye, right? If you listen to Kanye's music, it's no longer about the music. It's Kanye, right? It means Kanye. It means Kanye's values. It means what Kanye stands for. So you can see how we've flip-flopped that relationship between signifier and signified when we are interpreting art. Now, I would like to say that actually I feel like in reality, I'd probably go with the more Derridian argument, where it's like, actually, there is no signified. It's just signifiers. It's just signifiers. So that means it makes it impossible for you to oscillate between the referring back and forth. But anyways, because art has essentially done this, because we've done this violence with art, essentially, you can see how the artwork itself becomes the name, the abstract name, and to parallel this, the abstract name cat, and then Kanye becomes the signifier, and to have this other parallel, it's like the real cat as such, right? Cat's going crazy. They love to play in boxes. Anyways, but there is a third thing. There's a third thing that actually makes this whole argument and what I'm saying even more complicated. It makes it more complicated. I'll tell you why. The reason why this makes it complicated is because I think it's a rebuttal. It's actually one that Paris Stu made, where she said that the artist is still intimately linked with the art because they still gain some type of influence. And the way I understood this is like economic and social influence. And it's because we keep referring back to the artist and consuming the artwork. Basically, because the artwork becomes a kind of commodity, it implicitly gives the artist influence and power. So even though I've argued that, in my opinion, the artwork is rather indifferent to the artist's intentions, what makes it more complicated to even have this argument or assert this argument is because of the third thing. The third thing is the very fact that there is this sort of mediating technological commodification of the art that's economic, and it brings, social influence. So basically, like, consuming the art means basically implicitly supporting the artist. Now, the only solution that I have to this, I mean, it wouldn't even be really a solution, so to speak. If you guys are thinking about the way I think about the problem, the discourse of the problem, but the way I feel like I feel like there's a funny way to get around this because it's not really getting around it. It's where you hold the artist to ethical standards while simultaneously supporting the artwork. So like, and I really like this. I really like this idea just because it's like the most ironic thing. It's like the most it's like the biggest contradiction you could ever do. It's like, yeah, Kanye sucks, and they're like, but why are you listening to his music? You're like, oh, because his music's awesome. That's why. you know, um, like I don't go for like the A's A logic of like the art. I have to condemn the artwork because the artist is bad. Instead, I'm like, the artist is bad, but the art is good. So it's like A B, and then like I'm walking around listening to Kanye. They're like, why you listen to Kanye? I'm like, well, I'm listening to his music, but like, yeah, I mean, he's totally a bad person. Like, but why you listen to his music? Oh, because I like his music, you know. And I feel like it's a way of getting around to where you can be one ruthlessly hold the artist responsible in whatever social criteria we want to hold them responsible for. But then while simultaneously holding a kind of ethical responsibility for the art as well, meaning like we don't condemn the art by virtue of implication, right? Um, and I think if we stop looking at art as a dead thing rather as a living thing, you know, I don't think the art is guilty by virtue of whatever Kanye does. I don't think so. You know, I don't think so. Um, but I really do like the ironic twist of holding the artist responsible, but simultaneously enjoying the music. Because to me, it's just like the most ironic thing. We can make it indifferent, but we just choose not to. And then we also forget how we can reinscribe values to a piece of art. For some reason, we always forget that we can have this ability, this Midas touch that me and Daniel talked about, to reinscribe a value. But for some reason, we're scared to reinscribe a value. We want somebody to blame for the inscription of value when we are very well capable of inscribing a value. In this case, if we want to talk about the third thing is the subject between the artist and the artist of the artwork. Like you are the third thing between the artist and the artwork. And I think that's what's so difficult to capture is because it's like we keep talking about the artist or we either try to defend the artwork or the artist or whatever, but you have to understand like the third thing is the subject, is the one that is mediating this thing between the artist and the artwork. And so it's up to you in some ways to hold the artist responsible for whatever ethical implications, and then also at the same time have an ethical implication for the art. Like the art did nothing wrong by virtue of itself, right? In order for you to say that the art did something wrong, you'd have to refer back to the artist. But like I said, if there was anonymous art in the world, and if every art was anonymous, and I think this is why AI art is so funny, is because you can't refer back to an artist, right? You can't like blame an artwork if it's created by an AI. Like you can't blame it. All you can do is be like, oh, the AI made it. He stole, he stole from other artists. It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? You can't put the art. You can't condemn the AI. Like it's very hard to condemn the AI for this. The only thing you could condemn, I guess, is like the creators for the app, I guess. But again, it's the third thing is difficult to catch within the oscillation of the artist and the artwork. And to me, it's always us. We're the subjects. We're the third thing that is mediating this, allowing the artwork and the artist to communicate in the first place. And so in some sense, it's not just imposing ethical responsibility or moral condemnation on the artist. It's also by virtue of the fact that we have a responsibility of not only holding the artist accountable, which, that's what culture has done, but of separating the artwork, and then also holding ourselves accountable for not allowing the artwork to become basically contaminated. So that's our ethical responsibility in that sense, to not have the artwork contaminated, to continue it, to continue the artwork for, I can't even say the word, to allow the artwork to continue and constantly be re-inscribed with new values. That's our ethical responsibility, in my opinion, for the artwork. The artist, sure, he can do the initial inscription, but fundamentally, it's the subject that allows the communication between the art and the artwork in the first place. So there is an ethical responsibility that we have other than just condemning the artist. And I will end there. I think that's all I really have to say. All right, guys, take care. Bye.